And I couldn't get my lapel mic to work, so we're stuck with this one. Can everyone hear me okay? Great. It really helps with the recording if people can hear me well, and the mic helps. Okay, my name is Bonnie Brzozowski. I'm a public services librarian here at the Corvallis-Benton County Public Library. I have never had this many people ever attend this class. I've taught it for a number of years now, but thank you for your enthusiasm and for being here. I'm really excited. So we're going to talk about identifying misinformation today. And this class has had a lot of different names. I've called it fake news. I've called it Search Like a Pro. And I don't really know the best title for it. So I'm really intrigued if any of you have an idea after seeing the content and you're like, you should name it this. Let me know. I don't know what appeals to people. But I think that this topic, just the idea of misinformation and a lot of it being out there, is out in the news. People are talking about this a lot. So I think it definitely has some renewed interest. So using that misinformation word maybe helps. And just a heads up, what does misinformation mean? There is a difference between misinformation and disinformation. Misinformation is information that's incorrect without really intent to deceive. Disinformation is bad information, but the intent is to deceive. That's the intention of putting it out there. We're talking about misinformation more, but the tactics that I'm going to talk about today are going to apply to disinformation as well. I want to point out that this is not the work of myself. This is based on the Check Please starter course. This is the work of Mike Caulfield. He's an educator at the University of Washington. And this is an entirely free, very detailed course that you can take online. There is a link to it on the resources document. And if you didn't get one of those, I'm sorry, I wasn't expecting so many of you, but I'd be happy to email it to you or get you a copy after the class. So a lot of the things that are in here are verbatim from that class because it's under a Creative Commons license and people like me can reuse it however I like. So just want to give that out because I'm not necessarily citing or quoting him in every single place. We can pretty much guarantee that it's all from the Check Please starter course. And I really encourage you to take a look at that if you want to spend more time practicing and seeing examples. So this is frustrating because I can't get my computer to display my notes. So I'm winging it a little bit here. Let me see what I can remember about this slide. I was going to try to just sum up my class for you in like 2 minutes or less to see if you don't have any time to sit here, if you end up tuning out for the rest of the time, maybe this would be useful to you. But there are kind of there's lots of types of misinformation, but really the most common ones that people are interacting with these days is manipulated content, fabricated content, or a trick of context. So manipulated content is when like a photo is actually like manipulated to look a different way than it was before. So people using like Photoshop or other photo editing tools to manipulate something. Often it's photos, but it can be other stuff too. Fabricated content is stuff that's just completely fabricated, totally made up. A lot of AI stuff we're seeing out there could be called fabricated content. Trick of context, that's when something is presented as being related to a certain news topic, but it actually isn't. So like really common examples, like you might see like, oh, look how many people turned out for this protest. But then you find out that that photo is from a protest from 2017, not 2025. And so it's like, it's kind of using that, misusing the context or tricking the context. How do you deal with stuff like this? I mean, one of the big ways is really stopping and slowing down. We're going to talk about that, but a lot of this kind of content is generated to exploit your emotions. And when you're in an emotional state, you're going to be a lot less likely to fact check it. It's going to trigger your bias. So I think that's what they're really relying on. So when you see something, especially that's particularly inflammatory, that's a definite reason to sort of slow down and ask some questions. But it's also asking like, well, what is the evidence actually being presented here? Am I to just rely on this one person saying it or this one screenshot they've shown me? It's asking questions of who is providing this info. Is it a standards-based news outlet? Is it just some user on Facebook? Who is that person? Why would they have this knowledge? So it's asking questions like that. It's asking questions about agenda, because some groups are set up to look very professional and they're providing information that seems very legit. But then when you look at the organization itself, you realize they might have some kind of advocacy bent. They're created to market or lobby for a certain thing or a certain side, and so they're only going to generally show you information that bolsters what they're for, what they stand for. And we're going to look at some examples of that. So I probably missed some things there, but I think it's a little bit more important that we actually get into examples, and I have a little bit more intro to do here. So let's dive into it. I feel like some people walk away from any class I teach, honestly, or come in with this mindset that they're really cynical about the internet. Like, nothing is true. You can't ever find anything good. Like, it's just a mess. I'm done with it. Wash my hands. But really, what I want you to do is to think about being a skeptic rather than a cynic. So, like, a skeptic asks questions. A skeptic is like, well, what is this? Who's saying this? Why are they saying this? Who else is saying this? And are those people reliable? Are those outlets reliable? So it's asking a lot of questions. It's being a little unwilling to take things at face value just because it was presented to you like on your social media feed or something like that. So let's be skeptics, not cynics. And then sometimes I've had to quibble with people a little bit about this, but we are all biased. Every last one of us, me, you, everyone. It's just a part of being a human being. There's lots of books that I could recommend on this. One of my favorites is Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. But it really, if you dive into that, like we just have tons of biases. There's lots of things that activate our bias. Like I said, emotion is a big one. And then also news organizations, reporters, all kinds of people providing information, even good quality information, they have bias too. But what really matters is that they have processes and staff in place to help mitigate bias. And we'll talk about that a little bit. And then ultimately, I think if you walk away with nothing else, just kind of think about agenda. Often, what we're doing when we're fact checking something is we're seeing, does this organization or individual have some kind of agenda? Do they tend to only promote anti vax stuff? Does that make them biased in any way? Who else is saying what they're saying? Are they considered an expert? It's just asking a lot of these kinds of questions about, like, well, what's their agenda? It really should be your kind of primary concern, especially when you're looking at news and research organizations and what they're actually set up to do and why they exist. And like I said, good process and good culture really go a long way to mitigating bias. And then I like to give a quick shout out to logical fallacies. I have this chart in the back if you want to take one. Sometimes people want it, sometimes people don't. There's also a website, fallacydetected.com. Logical fallacies are employed constantly in arguments, and they're really, really heavily used by all politicians. But this particular chart, I like it because it really gives you a great example. And so the argument is robots should take over the world. And so the other robot is like, okay, yeah, sure. Well, what are your arguments? And so here's an example. The robot says, well, I've met a few people and I conclude that all humans are ugly, evil, and they smell like socks. Well, that's illogical, but we make those generalizations all the time, right? You see one thing and you're like, that's like that. All of them are like that. It's a really common bias, but it's also illogical, right? If we slow down and think about it, that argument doesn't hold water. So say, I like the slippery slope. So the argument, if we act nice to humans now, soon they're going to demand constant back rubs. That doesn't really logically follow either. Like there's nothing to suggest that being nice is going to cause this, cascade of other behaviors. So, and that's a slippery slope. So I like logical fallacies. It's funny because I find myself using them a lot, and I have to remind myself, I'm like, that's a generalization. So it's funny to kind of, once you read them, to sort of spot them in life, and they're everywhere. But what we're really going to be focusing on today is we're going to be learning what's called the moves, and this is the system that Mike Caulfield developed. It has an acronym. It's called SIFT. So let's go through that really fast. And this is not an order of operations. Sometimes you're going to employ different ones of these strategies depending on what the information is that you're interacting with. So we've got stop. So I've kind of talked about this a little bit. It's kind of stopping and asking yourself, do you know the website or source of the info? What's the reputation of both the claim and the website that you're using, or the wherever you're getting the information from? I for investigating the source. So actually knowing what you're reading before engaging with it. You'd be surprised like how much misinformation you might read and then be like, oh, that was misinformation, but you might just retain it as just regular information. If you think about all the content you might be consuming online, this is really about making sure that like you have a good information diet, like you're actually choosing to read things that are worth your time. And we'll give some good examples of that later, I think. Find trusted coverage, that's the F. When investigating a claim, you want to look for trusted reporting or analysis of the claim. So this is relying on the idea that tons of outlets are doing lots of fact-checking work, and they're showing you their full process for how they've broken down a claim and how they've researched it. We don't have to be crazy expert researchers to do a lot of these fact checks. We can rely on those outlets to show us what they did. We don't have to agree with the conclusion they make about whether or not it's true or false, but we can see what their process was. We can then replicate that process and come to our own conclusions. You can trace claims, quotes, and media back to its original context. This is a big one. There's a lot of stuff taken out of context in memes and videos. This is really like the gold of social media is just stuff taken out of context and put in a weird context. But you want to trace those things, claims, quotes, media, back to its original source so you can see it in its original context and get a sense if the version you saw was accurately presented. Context is everything. And if you've ever just studied journalism, you know this. Sift, so stop. So let's focus on that one first. So this is asking yourself, like I said, whether you know and trust the website or source of info. It's also kind of after you begin a search, if you find yourself kind of going down these rabbit holes just to fact check something that really should be quick, honestly, you're going to find that most of these fact checks we do are super quick. Usually you actually want to stop and take a second to remind yourself, what's your goal here? You do not have to be a world-class researcher to do a lot of these fact checks. And stopping is just a huge part of it because our emotions get in the way. We do need to check our emotions. Those are going to push us to share things that have really gotten us fired up. And those are above all the things that we have to fact check. We have to check our emotions. And then before we move on from stop is a short one. I want to point out that the library actually, and I didn't mention this part as well in stop, is also kind of thinking about what sort of information you want to find before searching for it. So if you do an internet search and you're trying to fact check something and you're just getting all these websites, you're like, I've never heard of this website. This looks really spammy. This doesn't look right. I don't know all these websites look weird to me. I don't recognize any of them. That's another reason to kind of stop and be like, do I need to reframe? Do I need to change my words? Do I need to search somewhere else? Like, what is it that I'm missing here? Like, like I said, like, if you're just allowing yourself to just be like, internet, take me away, and clicking on everything, who knows what jumble of information is going to get in there, and is that good information or not? There's lots of bad information online, so we have to try to restrict ourselves to finding the good stuff or focusing on the good stuff. Oh, and so the library actually subscribes to a lot of websites that you can access from home as well as in the library. You don't have to have a library card to access them in the library. That can help you do research on different topics. So if there's a specific topic you're researching and you're looking for really authoritative websites, you might find a good one on our learning and research page. It's if you're on any library webpage and go to collections, learning and research, you'll find that there's a lot of different things that we subscribe to. I'd also encourage you to ask a librarian. The librarians here are really knowledgeable. Ask us. And I would also recommend maybe shooting us an email because that gives us more time to like process your question and assign it to people who might have better expertise. Because sometimes you go to the desk, you might not catch someone who happens to know a lot about it. So feel free to like write it up, email us, like call us. We'll try to get you the best answer we can. So let's look at investigate. Investigating is knowing what you're reading before you read it. So this is taking 60 seconds to just figure out, well, where is this actually from before engaging with it? And so let's look at an example. So this is actually an example that the Standard History Education Group did. They did a study where they looked at Stanford professors, students, and fact checkers, and they compared their ability to compare two different websites and decide which one is more credible. So the test was this. They had to look at this website here. This is gosh, oh yeah, the American College of Pediatricians. It's acpeds.org. Compared to this website here, which is the American Academy of Pediatrics, aap.org. So are these credible websites? Which one is more credible than the other, and why? So what happened is they were given 5 minutes to figure this out. The professors and the students got it wrong like almost all of the time. The fact checker, and they took the full 5 minutes to get it wrong. And then the fact checkers got it right in about 30 seconds. And does anyone know what they might have done? Have an idea?
Of the organization.
Look up the, yeah.
Yeah, essentially, yes, exactly. They went to Wikipedia. They went to Wikipedia of all places, which some people are surprised by. But Wikipedia actually has a lot of good, really basic facts about organizations. They're really good at consensus viewpoints. So if there's a topic that has a lot of consensus on it, there's usually a good article on that. But even if there's a topic where there's a lot of controversy, they usually point that out too. So really, and Wikipedia is great because they actually cite their sources. So if you've ever noticed, they're putting little notes next to facts that they're putting in there. If they don't have one, it'll usually say citation needed. We don't know where this info came from, and so I wonder what that's all about. I don't know if that's true or not. But you can actually follow these references and see where did they get this info. You can also, they often have like external links at the bottom that just link to really informative websites that might be about that particular topic or organization. So yeah, all the fact checkers did is they just put the word Wikipedia after the website in the URL, and I'm going to show you this if what I'm saying is Greek to you. And they were able to super quickly just look at the little Wikipedia knowledge panel and realize the difference between these two organizations. And this is the study. If you're interested, I'm going to give you a link at the end, and that links over to these slides. So if you want to revisit these slides later, you'll be able to. But let's take a look. So with, oh, it's already going. So the URL, that's the web address up there. Just put your cursor up there, type Wikipedia after it. The Wikipedia comes right up. It actually tells me right here, the American College of Pediatricians is a socially conservative advocacy group. Well, why do they say that? Well, I don't even actually dig into it, honestly. These facts really stood out to me. So it was founded in 2002, that's 23 years ago. A long-term professional association is usually going to have been around for a really long time, especially if it caters to pediatricians. Sorry, this is taking on a life of its own.
It's not very long.
It isn't. So most professional associations have really been around for like 50 plus is more common. The other thing my guy wanted to go so fast is the year it was founded. 2002. What was the other thing? Oh, it was the number of people that are a member of it was really interesting. Oh, slightly more than 700 members. So American Pediatricians. So that right there. I'm just like, that's interesting. That seems fishy to me. What's going on with this organization? What else do I need to know about this organization? And so in fact, like I can actually follow some of these links where they say that they're socially conservative and or whatever it was however they phrased it. Yeah, socially conservative advocacy. And they'll show you how they've determined that. And basically this organization formed because they oppose adoption of children by gay and lesbian couples. So that is why this organization exists. And so they also have a website about biological integrity, if you can guess what that might be about. So so they do have an agenda of some kind. What about American Academy of Pediatrics? Same strategy. Add Wikipedia. We get it right away. We find it's the largest professional associations of pediatricians in the United States. Seems good, but I'm going to click on it anyways. It's been around since 1930. It's 95 years old. It has 67,000 members. And we also find that it's the largest professional association of pediatricians in the U.S. You can find a lot of information about its history. You can see this is the table of contents of their article compared to the Wikipedia one. It's really detailed. So you can kind of tell, like, okay, so if you're looking at both organizations and they're both feeding you information, whose information are you going to be a little more trustworthy of? And really the answer is the American Academy of Pediatricians, because they're going to be less likely to provide information that has any kind of advocacy bent. That's sort of what they're set up to do, is to represent lots of different pediatricians. So what are we doing here? And what did the students and the Stanford educators do that the fact checkers didn't? Well, they spent a lot of time just looking at the two websites, and they were like, oh, they're both really professional, but this one looks a little better. So I think it's that one. What they didn't do is lateral reading, which is what the fact checkers did. So lateral reading is looking at what other websites and resources say about the resource you're using. And that's because websites know how to look professional. They know how to appear a certain way. So we have to be on the lookout for that. That is not a sign of integrity. A sign of integrity is understanding, well, how do other people view this organization? Is it generally considered a left-leaning organization, a right-leaning organization? Is it generally considered an organization that tries to avoid those kind of biases? Like what are we engaging with here? And then just a quick note about expertise. I just like this comic a lot. It's some scientists sitting around in their lab and they say, hey, I know we've dedicated our whole lives to this, but this guy's comment on Facebook raises some interesting questions. And so I'm not saying that people on Facebook don't have interesting questions, but the point of this is that these folks have spent their whole lives thinking about this, usually when it comes to science, a very specific topic. So just the idea that they haven't considered, that's their job, is to consider all the ins and outs of it. So the idea that like you kind of just thinking about it at home on your couch, you've all of a sudden cracked the code and asked the right question. It's just a little, maybe not, but yeah.
My own search.
Right. Yeah. Right. So we do have to decide who is an expert and who isn't an expert. And sometimes, honestly, that's not so straightforward. Sometimes you might decide, well, they do kind of have some expertise on this topic, but also they kind of don't. So I want to see what other experts are saying. So it's also kind of deciding, like, is this particular expert, are you going to put all your trust and faith in them? Most of the time, I would say don't. I would say ask some questions, like, is this the right kind of expert to listen to? Is this an expert that I feel like I can trust based on their research and background and that kind of thing? So let's do two examples. These examples are in no way related to one another. These individuals aren't related to one another, but it's just to kind of show you two differing examples. But so the first one is this gentleman, Niels Bildt. He's billed as a Swedish defense and national security advisor, and he appeared on the O'Reilly Factor. And then there's another person, totally different article here, Randall Aki of UCLA, and they're talking about a study he did about household income. And so it's like, okay, well, are either of these people experts on the things it kind of says they might be an expert on? So would Randall Aki, would he be a good person to listen to about children's well-being and household income? And is Niels Bildt a good person to listen to about Swedish defense and national security? Well, let's find out. So we're going to start with really the exact same thing we did before, but I'm just Googling Niels Bildt Wikipedia. And what I find is that he doesn't have a Wikipedia page ultimately, though there's another guy with a similar name. So I click on him. But he was actually a prime minister of Sweden. So I think that they would tell us that the Niels Bildt on TV was the prime minister of Sweden, because that's like a big deal. And then also, like, that doesn't look like him either. So I don't think we found it. So I'm really not getting anywhere with any of these pages. They don't look like the guy I'm talking about. They keep talking about Niels Bildt, who probably isn't alive anymore, or who is quite older than the gentleman we saw on TV. So what I do instead is I just try Niels Bildt Sweden. I'm like, is there anything about this guy? He says he's from Sweden. And what's interesting is then I get a number of different news articles from several different outlets, including a statement from Bill O'Reilly himself saying that Mr. Bildt is really not an expert, that it's right to ask about his expertise because he didn't actually really have any. So even Fox News came out and was like, yeah, that guy he's not really an expert. So it was pretty. That was really quick, right? Just a few minutes. We're like, yeah, that guy's not an expert. So what about Randall Aki? And this is just me kind of looking at results. I'm trying to be like, okay, I won't just rely on the Guardian and New York Times, because people like to throw liberal bias at them. So we're going to talk about that some more, but I just want to kind of look at everything. And then Randall Aki. So same deal. I try to look for a Wikipedia article about him. Often scientists like this, or like scholars, don't have Wikipedia articles, so it's kind of a roll of the dice whether or not we get one. But interestingly, I do get his UCLA page that talks about what he does. He's a microeconomist. He has a profile at he must work at the Brookings Institute. There's information about him at other universities. And yeah, it looks like he's doing public policy. Like he said, he's a microeconomist. So okay, but I wasn't satisfied. It's like, well, what if I just search his name? And I get even more. I get some of the same things, but I also get like Center for Effective Glow. Like it looks like this guy looks like an expert to me. He's at a lot of colleges. He's doing this kind of work like that I think would apply to children and household income. But then I don't give up. I'm like, well, I still don't really know what kind of studies does he do. So I click on the Google Scholar page, and we actually could have gone to just scholar.google.com and searched for him if he's someone who's supposed to actually have written journal articles. And what's great is it will tell you which journal articles he's written, how often they've been cited, which when an article is cited a lot, it means that a lot of other experts find it accurate and good. And then it tells you other things about him, like who he actually is. So Google Scholar is a resource on that resources list, and it's a great way to kind of see what are the experts that are talking to you. Have they actually published anything? What do they publish about? Sometimes you'll find like, oh, this study author is cited as talking about this particular topic, but he actually studies something totally different. So why are we listening to him on this topic? So it allows you to kind of ask questions like that. So we're going to move on to F, find trusted coverage. So when you care about the claim an article is making, you just want to know if it's true or false. Your best strategy is to find trusted coverage. Well, has anybody published anything on this topic that could be considered like an authority or someone who's done a lot of research? So how would we deal with this? Oh, and the reason that find trusted coverage is so important is because there's so much bias in algorithms. So what this means is when you're doing searches, sometimes you don't know why certain things are served up to you. And sometimes those reasons aren't actually because it's the best information to push to you. Number one, like algorithms just have bias because people make them. So people have bias, right? So people make products that are often as flawed as humans are. So we can assume that algorithms have some level of bias in them because some human being is making decisions about what information is getting ranked higher, right? Then there's also search engine optimization, SEO. You'll hear it referred to a lot. SEO is where there's a lot of companies and people out there that have spent a lot of time trying to figure out, well, what do the algorithms prioritize? So if you're trying to get in the top 10 results of Google for a particular topic, what do you have to do to get into that top 10? And so while an algorithm itself and how it works is considered intellectual property, we don't actually know how Google's algorithm works. A lot of people have studied it enough that they're like, okay, well, if you do this, this, and this, it puts you at the top. And we've seen that over and over again. And people do it with YouTube a lot. You can kind of figure out how YouTube works and then get all your videos to kind of come up when certain information is being delivered to you. So that right there just shows you that like that doesn't mean the best information is always going to get to you. It means the person who's paying the most or the most intent on making sure their information is in front of you, that's the information you're going to see first. Frequently, not always. Filter bubbles, this is just where, so if you're someone who's clicking on certain types of information more frequently, often your algorithms will start just serving you more of the same information. So if you are particularly left-leaning or right-leaning and you're always clicking on like left-leaning kind of articles or right, either way, you're going to just see more of that thrown at you. And so it kind of creates these little bubbles sometimes where people seem a little stuck in feedback loops, and you're just sort of seeing all the info that you really want to see, honestly, and no info that might challenge your worldview. And then there's also confirmation bias. I'm going to skip this for the moment because we're going to talk about this in more detail. And then this is becoming a real issue, and what's known as AI slop. You can also just call it AI generative content. It's not all slop necessarily, but just AI generated content. There's more and more of it on the web. You've probably noticed it in your social media feeds. I'd be really surprised if you haven't. If you haven't, look more closely because you're seeing it. It's if you're using Facebook or Instagram at least. I can't speak for TikTok. But AI slop, it's just random AI generated junk. It doesn't even look real frequently sometimes, but it's getting a lot of engagement. And they've in particular, so SEO used to rely on human beings trying to figure out and game these systems, right? Now with AI, we kind of know what the algorithms want, and we can be like, hey, AI, do this, this, and this, and they can just create a video for you or just create an image for you. So it's just becoming a lot easier to get all that stuff online. And so I'm even finding with like general internet searches, the internet is becoming a little less useful because sometimes certain topics are just drowned out by AI slop. In particular, I'm finding if you're searching a topic where you're trying to purchase something or it might lead to a purchase, a lot of those searches now are very full of AI. So you have to really think about who you're getting that info from. Let's look at confirmation bias because I think it's important. It's just the idea that bad answers or like bad results are sometimes just the result of asking questions in ways that tap into the language used by people promoting pseudoscience, conspiracy theory, or really fringe beliefs. This example is dated and doesn't quite, you're not going to get the same results anymore. They've actually fixed this search quite a bit, and you get a really nice result with either search term, which is nice, and which I do appreciate about searches. I don't know if you've ever noticed, but like Google does have little tiny feedback links. And I've provided feedback on lots of their searches. It doesn't mean they're going to change it right away, but they do start to do it. They used to, when you searched labor unions for a long time, it used to be nothing but inflammatory speech about labor unions. But now that's been changed. And there have been a number of like really famous examples that have been adjusted by these algorithms because we've seen the way that sometimes SEO and manipulating that can lead to like really harmful content coming up when you're searching like kind of basic things. Anyways, that was a little bit of an aside, but the example here, if you search MSG sensitivity, or if you used to search MSG sensitivity, Google does this thing, and you're seeing it more now with their AI, where they provide you like an AI generated response. This is a pre that where they were just kind of showing you what like an answer, and so there's a bunch of results under here, but they pull out one kind of piece of text from a certain source. So in this case, we actually get an okay response. Healthline isn't maybe the best of all sites. Like I'd rather it be like a Mayo Clinic or Cleveland Clinic or something like that. But Healthline, the people who author the articles do actually sign them, so you could research who the person is. They're often an MD or some other medical professional. And you can also see when the article was updated last, so that's not bad. So I would definitely take some of this, what they're saying. So this is a good answer. It causes mild chest pain, flushing, numbness. Some people are just sensitive to MSG. But if you used to search MSG dangers, you would actually get a much different response, and it's much more alarming. And it says that that MSG is in will cause brain damage, it can cause death, it can potentially trigger Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, Lou Gehrig's, etc. So that sounds really scary, right? Like that's why if we search MSG sensitivity, do we not get some of that information? And the fact is because at least the Western world of medicine, they don't think MSG is dangerous. So you're not going to get a lot of good, valid info when you search MSG dangers. You're going to get a lot of pseudoscience, fringe beliefs, conspiracy theory about MSG. If we search MSG sensitivity, we're using the language of Western medicine, of what experts would use. And so that's why we get better information. So your terms actually really matter, is kind of the point of this. And so that's kind of thinking about a number of different things, avoiding asking questions that imply a certain answer. So if this used to be an example, this was changed by Google after a lot of outcry, but you used to search, did the Holocaust happen? And the first page of results was all stuff saying that the Holocaust didn't happen. And so and the reason why is because we framed it like a question. And so it's like, there's a no or a yes answer, right? Now, if you ask that question, you get a lot of results about Holocaust denialism, which is a phenomenon. And so why do people deny it? What evidence is there that the Holocaust actually happened? You get a great set of results if you search Holocaust denialism, but we didn't frame our search that way. So we got a lot of stuff saying the Holocaust didn't happen. So what would have been a better search there is just Holocaust. And then we can see photos, images, video even of things that show us that this actually happened. So it matters. So, and then avoiding using terms that imply a certain answer. So one example is like if you search women makes 72 cents on the dollar, I'm just making up numbers here, and then you search women make 80 cents on the dollar, you'll get stuff that validates each of those claims. So what would probably be a better query is just gender wage gap or wage gap and see what kind of numbers are cited by different organizations and how they arrive at those figures and why. And you'll probably also, in that case, find out why is there disagreement on that number, because it's a hard statistic to arrive at. Avoiding culturally loaded terms. So the example I linked to it in the resources list, and there's a video about it, but it's kind of a hard example, but I'll give it anyways. So Dylan Roof, he killed a bunch of people, African American people, in a church in South Carolina. He was a stated white supremacist. Like, he said he was a white supremacist. Anyways, what they found in his journals later is that he was actually doing a lot of searching for black on white crime, or is it white on black on white crime? And that's not actually something that is studied too much, because crime actually tends to be race on race. So black on black, white on white, it actually tends to be interracial. There's not a lot of like black on white crime. It's not, anyways, it's not a phenomenon that sociologists really study, because they don't think it's necessary. It's not statistically as significant as interracial crime. But anyways, when you search that term, that taps into a lot of white supremacy websites. So what he got was a ton of just white supremacist content by searching that particular term. So again, it's like your words matter. The words you use to search are going to dictate what you're seeing in your algorithm. And that's why it's really important to plan to reformulate, to realize, like, I didn't want to see any of this stuff. I don't know anything about any of these websites I've gotten on this first page here. What are some other terms? And then often, like, so I, being a librarian, I get asked questions where I don't have any idea what the answer is. Like, people ask me about things that I don't know about, because they can ask me anything, right? And so I have to sometimes just like, okay, they say they're looking for this. And so I use their terms, and we're not really getting anywhere, but I start browsing like the little snippets and results, and I see other terms being used. I'm like, oh, I think maybe it's more often referred to as this. And so we'll try those search terms instead, and then pull up much better results. It's really common with like the library catalog. It's all a matter of like, well, what words are you using to get the results you want? Your words really matter. Okay. So let's do some examples. So I really like this one. It's fun. And this is when Twitter was Twitter, not X. So this is a screenshot from Twitter, and it's John Doe. He says, that's an expensive lunch. And he's sharing this link, and it's to a website called mandatory.com, which I've never heard of. It says this rat died after gorging on cash while it was stuck in an ATM. So say you just see this in your social media, and you're like, is this true? Like, did this really happen? Like, what would you do to try to find this out? Well, in this case, like, probably doesn't really make a lot of sense to research mandatory.com. I mean, we could, but you're not really going to get anywhere. I'm going to tell you right now about like mandatory.com. No one knows what that is. It's not a standards-based news outlet or anything like that. So how could we sort of see, well, did anyone report on this? What happened? So I'm just going to do a search for rat, ATM, India. I'm going to see if I get anything valid, like anything interesting. And I actually get this little summary that is, and BBC is cited. CNBC reported on it, Reuters, CBS, USA Today. There are a ton of Reddit threads about it. That isn't validation, but there was like a Fortune article. It went on and on. Tons of news outlets reported this. It was a huge story. It's really crazy. It's such an interesting thing. But yeah, it really happened. Like, that's as long of a fact check as I need to do. I'm like, yeah, it happened. Crazy. And then, but if I wanted to share it with my friends, then I could make a better choice about the source that I share to share that article. Maybe I could be like, oh, I'm going to share the Reuters instead. And then now people are seeing something that is a little more valid, and we don't have to decide, like, is this real? Is this not real? What's mandatory.com? And so this brings me to something that I think we have to address, which is news sources themselves, right? Yeah.
Is that an example of lateral reading?
I think it's more an example of finding other people who've reported on it. Yeah. So newspapers are very, so like when we're talking about, well, I want to find trusted coverage, what's trusted coverage, right? What is that? So when I'm talking about it, I'm talking about things like newspapers of record. There's lots of other things that can be authoritative, but when I'm talking about news-based outlets, I'm talking about newspapers of record. So these are rigorous, they show attention to detail, they have accountability in their editorial processes. They tend to have a national view and attempt to be the best possible record of what happened in the nation, not just a region on any given day. So what are some examples of that? There's a lot of examples. New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Los Angeles Times, Washington Post, maybe. Some people might take that out now. But you could also add in Boston Globe, Miami Herald, Chicago Tribune. You could take out LA Times, take out Washington Post, but these papers generally tend to be considered newspapers of record. There's a number of other English language newspapers of records like the Times, the Daily Telegraph, Times of India, etc. And so some people might be like, but they're biased. They have these agendas. They're biased, right? Well, number one, we've talked about agenda. They have all these cultures and processes in place to sort of mitigate bias, and they're not set up with an agenda in mind, right? That's a good news outlet. And yes, I think that they do skew, and most people do, some of them skew more left, more centrist, and more right. Often when we're talking about where they land, it's their opinion part. And so sometimes you'll notice like this in this chart too, some people be like, oh, I disagree with this chart. It's like, that's okay. People have a lot of disagreements about this too, as to who's more right or more left, or and it changes too. Like I've noticed like Wall Street Journal like has been considered very centrist lately, and like in the past, like when I was younger, it was often considered more right leaning. So this changes too. So and often you'll notice too, like you'll see like they'll actually single out, nope, the opinion part of that, like NPR opinion is left, but they put NPR news as center. So like when we're talking about like left, right, centrist bias, like we also need to think about, well, what are we talking about the opinions, or are we talking about their analysis, like their news, basically their news reporting? Because news reporting should be very factual, right? So yes, I do think you will find bias in news. It's part of it, but often the bias should appear more in the commentary and opinion, and so that's why it's helpful that these sort of organizations label things as opinion, commentary right before you start engaging with it, so you know whether or not is this an opinion I want to engage with? Whose opinion is this? Do I care about their opinion? You can ask those questions before reading it. And then I want to point this out because you're like, but they get things wrong. And it's like, yeah, because everybody does. I don't know anyone who's not going to get it wrong sometimes. It's part of trying to, when you're trying to suss out the information landscape, it's complex. And also, when you think about breaking news, those stories are changing constantly. And so some reporting that might have happened earlier might later be shown to be totally wrong. And that's okay. Like, we need to realize it's the commitment to fact checking and correcting errors that's what's important, but not only just doing it, actually telling us when they've done it. So not making changes to articles and not telling us. Like when a paper makes a correction, they let you know that this is a correction, or a previous version of this story said this and that was wrong. So that's the kind of thing that we're looking for when we're talking about like good process, good culture, and it's the commitment to correcting errors. And then just a very quick shout out to fake news, local news sites. A lot of people just sort of by default trust local news sites, right? Because they just seem like, oh, it's just the little Sacramento paper. Why wouldn't I believe what they say? But a lot of people are kind of capitalizing on this and creating what appear to be local news sites that aren't actually local news sites. And a lot of it's like AI generated content, sometimes plagiarized content. It's often attributed to real people that didn't write the things. There's a number of articles about this now of that happening. But anyways, it's sites that make themselves appear to be local news. So like an example is Denton Daily, Livingston Ledger. Those are not legit. Really, this is very easy to do a search on Wikipedia. I mean, Wikipedia is going to tell you if a local news outlet, how long they've been around, why were they developed in the first place, like who started that outlet, does that outlet have an agenda or advocacy bent? So Wikipedia is often going to be a really good way to just double check that that's a legit local news site. Okay, let's talk about Trace. We're going to spend probably most of our time talking about Trace. It's probably one of our better strategies, one we'll use a lot, especially if you're a social media user. But this is, again, the web often strips information of its context. If we want to understand how something's being portrayed, we have to find that context. So we're going to trace the claims, quotes, and media back to their original context. And so let's do an example. So this was posted to every town for gun safety. So they're for gun safety. It says it in the name. And it was posted on their social media site. And it says that this NRA former CEO, I don't think he currently is. Maybe he is. I could be wrong. Wayne LaPierre. He says, we believe in absolutely gun-free, zero tolerance, totally safe schools. That means no guns in America's schools, period. And people were like, what? How could he say that? Like, this is crazy. And so a lot of people, like, this went viral. A lot of people wanted to know, did he say this? Like, what happened? And so the short of this is, yes, he said this. The long of it is it's taken out of context. And so, and knowing the context matters. And so let's fact check it. So this is, oh, come on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start. There we go. Okay. I'm going to search part of the quote in quotes. So we believe, so that's going to search for that phrase, that specific phrase. And then I added his name outside of the quotes. And I really wish my computer would stop doing that. And then I actually come across 2 fact checks. There might actually be more, but I didn't recognize those websites. And I started with PolitiFact, not for any particular reason. I just think Snopes' website is so busy that it bothers me. So I just went to PolitiFact because I know their website's cleaner. And what I'm going really fast here, unfortunately, but what they did is they were like, hey, yeah, this is from an NRA 1999 annual convention speech. And so I have to suffer that ad. But once I skip it, they actually take me exactly to the place that he said it, the minute he said it. And this is C-SPAN here. So this is an actual video. And then C-SPAN includes the transcript. And so, yeah, I can see, yeah, he said that. But he said more. With the rare exception of law enforcement officers or trained security personnel. So that matters. That quote matters, you know, like that rest of that quote matters because it puts a totally different spin on what he said. But then what's interesting too is Wayne LaPierre has said that he has always advocated that teachers have guns in schools. But to me, this doesn't read that way. So, you know, like it just kind of shows like the nature of truth, the nature of context, right? Here's another example. So is this photo real? It's got circulated quite a bit, and it looks like it's Harrison Walz. This is when they were on the campaign trail with a Revolutionary Communists of America poster behind them. And I do have that this is manipulated here because it's not real. How would we figure out whether or not this is real, right? So this is where reverse image searches can be really, really helpful. But I also want to point out, if this feels like too big a thing for you to do, there's other ways to search for info about this stuff. You don't have to do a reverse image search. And the weird thing about telling you how to do a reverse image search is that there's so many different ways to do it. It's like, I don't even know where to start. But I'm going to show you at least 2 different ways today, and we'll see how that works out. So let's see. I'm going to get out of my spreadsheet or my, slideshow here. And I think I have the site pulled up. I'm just having a hard time seeing my browser because I've got all this Zoom stuff in my way. Here it is. Okay. So if you're able to actually get the photo pulled up or singled out in its own browser, so whenever you right click on a photo in your web browser, this is if you're on your computer. So but I am going to talk about how to do this on your phone. If you right click on a photo, you often get options like open the image in a new tab or save the image. I usually just open the image in a new tab. And what that does is it puts the image on its own URL. So it has its own address right here. And then if I go to Google Images, which I'm going to do right now, so that's images.google.com. What that has is this nice little camera next to it where you can search by image. And I forgot to copy my URL here, so I'm going to copy this. And it says I can either drag an image, so an image I've saved on my computer, or I can just paste the image link. I'm going to paste the image link, so I'm copying and pasting here. I'm going to hit search, and I'm going to see what we get. And so you'll notice there's these little tabs here products, homework, I don't even know what those are. But visual matches and exact matches are really helpful because they will often link you to any fact checks that might have been done about that particular image. But I find that I actually don't even have to click on those tabs because I get a fact check right away. It brings me to the Snopes fact check right away. It brings me to the AFP. That's another fact checking website as well. It also brings me people who posted it on their actual page too. So some people who think it's real or seem to have thought it was real because they posted it. But I think it was exact matches that I liked a lot. Yeah, like exact matches in particular gives me Reuters, Yahoo, Snopes, and on and on and on of people who did fact check this because it went so viral. And they found that it was just a manipulated photo. It's really, really common to be able to change the text on a shirt or like the poster behind somebody or what the sign says. That is like the easiest Photoshop trick ever. So it's really simple for people to do. It takes nothing but a moment to do it. So no, this wasn't actually real. Let me show you what the real photo did look like. And so that's the difference. So that's the manipulated one, and that's the genuine. It was just a sign that said Kamala, and the coach, the students at that school that they were visiting, made the poster for them. So that's all it was. So let's look at how to use Google Lens to do reverse image searches. So this is if you're on your phone, which a lot of us are. We're on our phones, like on our social media. We're like, is this real? What is this? So how would we actually use Google Lens? Google Lens is an app. It's made by Google, and you can install it, and it gives you this nice reverse image search feature that you might be interested in. And this is a super quick TikTok video from the News Literacy Project, which I rely on a lot for examples like this. The News Literacy Project has tons of curriculum for how to teach classes like this, if you have any interest in that. Let's find out.
A real text message I got from my friend. Can you reverse image search?
And I like the example.
Let me tell you, finding the same exact furniture online for cheaper using digital verification tools feels like it should be illegal. This is a real text message I got from my friend. Can you reverse image search this and see if they're available elsewhere? Absolutely, I can. I found this one on Home Depot for a fraction of the cost, and I found this one also for way cheaper. Here's how. First step is saving or taking a screenshot of the image. Then you'll need to make sure you have the Google app downloaded to your phone. Click the camera icon, upload the image, and then Google Lens will bring up all of the similar images that you can sort through for the best price. And as a bonus tip, when you're using the Google app, you can also hold down on the image and select search inside image if you're looking for similar items, or you can select find image source if you're trying to find where else that same photo has been used. This is what it looks like on my phone. For others, you might be given a magnifying glass to select instead. A little context, I work in news and media literacy. I fact check viral junk online and teach other people how to fact check, so I'm reverse image searching all of the time. Knowing how to do a reverse image search can do way more for our media landscape than just save you money on furniture, though that part is great. It can let you know if the photo's been digitally altered. This is a tool called TinEye that I've done a tutorial on in the past. It can also let you know how old a photo is. That way you can tell if the image is outdated or possibly used in the wrong context. Bottom line, a reverse image search is just a necessary life skill at this point. So I sent all of these results off to my friend. She said I'm an angel, and I have to say, I agree. Let me tell you, finding the same exact furniture online for cheaper using
Thanks for listening to that. I like the
I had no idea.
simple way she presented that. And I actually didn't know that you could use the Google app that way. So it was news to me too. And I've been using it that way, and it's been really useful. But I want to point out that some people are just like, this just seems like a lot to me. Like, I don't, oh my gosh, like, what are you telling me? You can also just use keywords from the image or the video or what it is you're seeing and search and then add the words fact check to the end. Especially if it's something that went viral, there's a really good chance someone bothered to fact check it. So these are older examples, but they still work more or less. And this was a video that was shared saying that it was an Iran protest for democracy or March for Democracy. If we do a search, I can't remember what country it is. It's not Iran. It's not that year. It's just totally out of context. Same with these. There was a video that went around said that it caught Democrats stuffing ballot boxes. But if you were to search key terms related to that video, such as 2016, this was during the Democratic primary, voter fraud video fact check, you'd actually find that a lot of those videos is stuff that actually ballot workers always do. It's like part of their process. And then some of it wasn't even from this country, it was from Russia. So again, like just stuff that was just totally taken out of context and then sent as like inflammatory posts on social media, and people got very up in arms about them, but they're just not real. They're just not related to what they claim to be related to. And a real simple fact check search will tell you that. What do we do in the face of AI generated content, right? How do we trace that? Well, number one, if we do a reverse image search for an AI generated image, if it was shared a lot, more than likely it was fact checked, and we'll find a good fact check about it. There are still some signs in AI generated imagery that you're like, oh, that seems not real to me. But you'll also find I've done some quizzes where it's like AI generated or not. I think I did one through the New York Times recently, and I got it wrong sometimes. Sometimes I really couldn't tell the difference. So it's getting harder and harder to discern that. But again, like if we had done like Trump arrested the year that this happened, because I don't even think this is from 2024, and searched it. A lot of people like fact check this, and you can find other images. And it was just people playing around, making jokes. He had a court date that particular day, and people just went crazy with making these images. So no, that is not real. A reverse image search would tell us that. So let's actually do some more examples together. I've managed to keep about 4 minutes for us to do even more examples. I think that like the more examples you do, the more your brain kind of gets in that mode of like, wait, what is this? And like just asking more questions. I will say that the News Literacy Project has its own fact-checking site that I really like. It's called Rumor Guard. It is on the resources list under fact-checking organizations. What I like about Rumor Guard is they do a lot of like breaking down, like, why was this shared? Like, why, like, how did people create this misinformation? How did they break it down? I like their process a lot for showing you how they did things. And so we're using Rumor Guard's actual slides here. See if I can make them full screen for us. It's hard when I can't really see the screen. Here we go. It's hidden. Okay. So yeah, and these are also, there's something called the SIFT. It's a newsletter that's done by the News Literacy Project. They send one about once a week, but they take hiatuses like when students are in school, because it's meant for creating stuff for students. But it's just a great newsletter that highlights like some of the recent fact checks that they've done, other like curriculum and stuff that you can use. Lots. So I've included not many of everything I had, but there's a bunch of different like little charts that they've created, like how to know if a journalism is actually like quality, like how do you determine what's a good media outlet, stuff like that. There's a one on 6 things to know about AI if you want that one. But let's do this. Okay. Okay, so here's a rumor. So this social media post appeared, and it says that Elizabeth Warren said there is nothing in the Constitution that says Americans have a right to see what we're spending tax dollars on.
Huh.
Okay, that's interesting. Where, like, I already have a lot of questions. Where did she say this? Like, can you tell where they got this quote from? And I'm going to spoil it for you and tell you it's a fake quote. It's not genuine, but what sort of questions would we have? Like, let's take a closer look. Like, what aspects of this post signify that it deserves scrutiny? Do any details make it seem credible? Anything that stands out to you? You're like, I would need to fact check this, or I would just take it.
It's just totally out of character for her to say.
It is. So yeah, so that's kind of like, why? Well, did she really say that? Yeah. It's not the person who's posted it, you can't fully see it, but it's unapologetic veteran. So that's not a news-based source or a source I've ever heard of. So I have a lot of questions about who shared it and why they would know that she said that. There's nothing telling us where she said it. So we can't like go and be like, oh, she said it in this certain speech, or we just have to like hope we can search everything Elizabeth Warren's ever said and see if she said that, like, so it's that's kind of weird too. So let's take a look even further here. So let's see. The post mentions a date, which kind of feels like evidence, but it also doesn't say where she said it. There's no video of her saying it. It's just a still image. So we don't even know if this image has anything to do with that quote. It may not. Who's sharing it? Like I said, it doesn't appear to be a reporter or a news organization. It just seems like an ordinary person. So yeah, I mean, I have a lot of questions. Like, I want to look into this more. Did she really say that? Was it on social media? Was it in a speech? Was it during an interview? Where did she say this? So how would we find out? So which verification strategy would you use? A reverse image search, a web search, a search on Warren's social media account, or an email to Warren's office?
Web search.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, reverse image search isn't going to be useful. Web search is our best, most efficient option. We can just search for that quote and see what we find. Yeah, I mean, we could search Warren's social media account, but it might that's going to be more cumbersome. And then reaching out to public officials, sure, that's great, but we're not necessarily going to get a response right away from them. So that could take a while. So yeah, we want to do a web search and look for high quality standards-based news reporting. And what do we find? So what we actually, oh, I guess I didn't include that part. But what we actually find when we search it is that a bunch of people fact check this because people were really curious, did she say this? And the Warren's office said, no, she never said this. But some people might not think that that's enough. But everything that like, I think it was it, I'm not want to pretend I know which outlets researched it, but the outlets that I read that researched it, they looked everywhere through every speech they could find of hers. They looked through anything that was online that she had said. They sent out requests to her office to be like, did she say this? But basically no one can find any proof she said this. So to me this is fake until you know the veteran guy or whoever, whatever he said his name was, until he can tell us like, where did you see this? It's just there's no evidence to support it. So as far as we know, it is not true. So I have just hit 101 and I don't want to take too much more of your time. Do you want me to do one more before we stop? Are y'all okay with doing one more? Okay, we'll do one more, but I won't do my other examples. I will show you though where these slides are because it has links to these. So if you want to like go through them yourself and take a look at the examples we didn't get to. So this was shared a lot on social media. It's saying that it's showing these ages of people between 100 and 369 who are still receiving checks from the Social Security Administration. And so it's claiming that these checks are going out to about 20 million dead people. Like that's a really big claim. Like I want to know, like, is this real? Like how would we find out? Number one, it's not real. It's really a misinterpretation. Also, we're not seeing the full thing that they shared, unfortunately, because we can't fit it on this slide. But unfortunately, this really just isn't true. And so, how do we know that? Let's see. I mean, they're pointing out that this really is trying to trigger a pretty like emotional reaction by putting like the WTF in there and the angry person. Like anyone could create this and send this. Like this isn't necessarily evidence because we don't know where it came from and who made it. This is also a complex topic. That's what we're going to find when we fact check it. It's not so cut and dry. So it's also why it's a little easy, I think, to kind of manipulate people a bit on what it's saying. So let's kind of do some observing. Well, where'd the chart come from? The claim is pretty sensational. Is there a more logical explanation for what we're seeing here? Who would be an authoritative source about this topic? It's something I have to think about all the time. Well, like, who would know? Who would know that? Honestly, the one who's going to know it the most is the Social Security Administration themselves. And we have to rely on them to some extent to give us this data. They're the only ones that have it. So let's do a web search. Keywords like Social Security, dead people, and checks could all maybe be useful in finding additional context. We could also try fact check as well and see if we get a fact check. We want to scan through results we get to make sure we get standard-based news outlets because, like I said, this was shared by a lot of people. So there's going to be a lot of people just re-reporting the same thing to us. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for somebody who actually like broke it down. And then we want to use like sometimes just relying on one source isn't a good idea either. Like, you know, like with the rat ATM India example, we found lots of news outlets. We didn't just find one news outlet reporting it. And generally that's going to be the case if it's something like this, something so big. So what you find is that several news outlets have actually looked into this claim and it's just not accurate really. And so the reason that it's not, so the Associated Press spoke with the Social Security Administration's acting commissioner. He explained that the chart includes lots of people who are dead and don't receive payments, but whose names remain in the database because their date of death is missing. So that chart was just showing like how many people have that age, not necessarily how many people were getting checks. Maybe if that chart was even valid, which I don't necessarily get proof of in this. The Guardian reported that the SSA is using a coding language, which I've read about this too, and it's kind of hard for me to wrap my head around a little bit, but called COBOL, and it automatically adds dates to missing fields, in this case to a default date of more than 150 years ago. What this is telling us is that the SSA already has something in place that cuts off payments to people of a certain age. So there's no way we're paying people that are 350 years old simply because we don't have a death date, because there's a coding language that cuts all that off. And then, but there's even more. It's like, it's really not straightforward. CBS News reported that these inaccurate dates were previously acknowledged by the SSA, which implemented a policy in 2015 to actually stop automatically sending checks to anyone listed over 115 years old. And then the AFP spoke to, that's a fact-checking organization, spoke to a professor of public policy and labor economics who said that this claim was absolutely inaccurate. So that honestly, that seems like a lot of info, like to say that this isn't quite correct. Social Security Administration, they disputed this claim. So did various economic experts, not just one. A much more logical explanation was offered. So in this case, we can say this claim just isn't accurate. So that's all I've got for today. I'm sorry we didn't get to more. There's a fact-checking quiz. Oh, let me show you just the end of my slide here, just so you can get that data in case you want to take a little photo of it or anything. Come on, buddy. Come back to me. Here it is. It's gonna tell me I need to go to lunch. I will. I'll let y'all read this, but the moves, the SIFT, it's all about recontextualizing things. It's trying to get things in the context the web strips away. There's a real just kind of summary of some of the stuff we talked about. The one thing that I didn't mention is intentionally read sources across the political spectrum. Broaden your world. Read everything. Like one of my favorite things is allsides.com. It'll show you a particular issue and then all the different ways it's being reported on by different outlets. And I like that because it really challenges me sometimes about like the way I'm framing things, and is that the only way to frame it? So it's really helped me a lot. This is the link I was trying to get you to. It's tinyurl.com/ID misinfo slides. And then it's our initials for our library, CVCPL. Feel free to take a little photo of it if you want. If you want to email Ask a Librarian, email us. I'll send them to you. I'll send you the recording. If you joined us live online,